On today's show, Alperen Sengun's monster game, a near triple-double, leads Turkiye past the Czech Republic in EuroBasket Game 2.
Okay, Alperen Sengun.
We're going to break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up? Merhaba, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down EuroBasket Game 2. Turkiye coming away with the win against the Czech Republic, 92-78. A just flat-out dominant monster game from Alperen Sengun. I want to get this right. Canavar Oyunu. A monster game for Alperen Sengun in this one. We're going to be breaking down his impact, how he really took control of this game and led Turkiye to the win. We'll also talk about the contributions from his teammates, Cedi Osman, some of the defensive contributions from a few other guys elsewhere in the lineup, the rough and tumble early part of the game, because the Czech Republic, Czechia was on fire early in this game, and Turkiye was able to weather the storm and survive the earlier part of that. So we'll get into all of that on today's show. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. To control your finances with Monarch Money, use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Alperen Sengun in this game was nothing short of sensational, and he got his work started early. By the end of the first quarter, by the time he checked out with about 8.5 minutes played in the first frame, he already had 9 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists in just 8.5 minutes played. He finished the game with 23 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 block shots, and a steal on 8 of 9 shooting, and then 7 of 10 shooting at the free throw line. It should have been a triple-double. I'm just saying, the offensive rebound and tap back to Furkan Korkmaz should have been an assist and a rebound. The FIBA statisticians only counted it as a rebound, which is dumb. Those tapping rebounds where you tap it to a teammate. It's a controlled tap. It should count as an assist. So, you know what? It's not a triple-double on paper, but it's a triple-double for Alpi in our hearts, and that's what really matters. Look, this was a game where it kind of felt like, Turkiye had to get it out of the mud in this game, right? And part of that was because early the offense didn't look great. Turkiye wasn't hitting shots from the perimeter. I want to say, I could be wrong on this, but I want to say they didn't hit their first 3 until the second quarter. I might be wrong on that. I didn't write that in my notes specifically, but that's what it felt like. And then you juxtapose that with Czech Republic that were hitting everything. They shot 6 of 10 from 3 in the first quarter alone, 60% from downtown. So you saw Alpi being aggressive early on to try and counter how on fire it felt like Czechia was early in the game. And what I really loved about Alpi in this game is he came in with probably a more aggressive mindset than he had in the previous game against Latvia. And he realized and recognized pretty early on how Czechia was going to be guarding him, and that they, for the most part, kind of let him just go to work, right? Like, he was able to go to work early. Shoot, I mean, he started going to work with, the playmaking, literally the tip-off, right? The tip-off assist right off the jump ball, which was so impressive. But the way in which Czechia was guarding him, he was allowed to really just kind of get to his spots, go to work. He had, I want to say, like at least 4 different and 1 opportunities this game where he absorbed contact, finished strong at the rim. And this is one of those really encouraging signs, right? Is the finishing at the rim, which was such a big issue this past season for the Rockets. You know, to see Sengun have a game where he goes 8 of 9, literally only missed 1 shot at the cup, and then a very respectable 7 of 10 at the free throw line. This was the kind of game where Alperen Sengun took it upon himself, said, you know what, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to lead the team, I'm going to be the best scorer, I'm going to go out there and be the number 1 finisher, and I'm going to be the number 1 option until I can kind of, fall back a little bit and focus on my playmaking and focus on getting my teammates involved. And that's not something that every star player is capable of doing effectively. And that's juggling and deciding, not just at the start or at the end of a game, but in the given flow of a game, deciding, okay, right now, I want to attack, I want to score. Then later, right now, okay, I want to facilitate, I want to distribute, I want to get my guys involved, right? And it's the ebb and the flow of a game and recognizing when and where and how to approach and how to do that. Last game, Alperen Sengun took a little bit more of a passive approach against Latvia, right? He was still aggressive. He still had some nice finishes. He was still, effective when he needed to be around the paint, but he also did a really good job, right? Latvia's double big lineup was specifically there to try and slow Sengun down. Czechia had nothing for Sengun. They had 0 answer for Sengun in this game, and he recognized that and took explicit advantage of going at them constantly, right? Making his presence felt early, being aggressive early. And then as Czechia tried to start adjusting and sending more attention to him, sending double teams, sending extra bodies, that's when he started to recognize and see, okay, these are now my passing angles, right? This is now how I can get my teammates involved. And so when you score 9 points in the first quarter, yeah, suddenly you're going to attract a lot of extra attention along the way. And it was great to see Sengun recognize kind of the slow transformation of the game from, okay, I can do this myself because they're not sending help. They're guarding me in single coverage. They're letting me get rolling downhill, and I'm able to get a full head of steam and then finish through contact right at the rim. They let him do all that early. And then by the end of the game, it was too late because they were committing so much attention to him that he was getting his teammates these beautiful, easy, wide open looks off little backdoor cuts or kickouts for 3. He had a bunch of just really nice connections, great little passes. He was in his wizard bag again with the passing in this game. And I believe, had FIBA statisticians not screwed around, I want to say somebody said that this would have been only the 5th or 6th triple-double in EuroBasket history. So a little disappointing that we were robbed of that. But overall, a really dominant game from Alperen Sengun. Exactly the kind of game you want to see out of him. And again, through 2 games, we've seen kind of 2 different versions of Alperen Sengun. And that's the beauty of it is, in this game, right, you didn't have another, Sipahi didn't have his, flamethrower equipped in this game, right? He wasn't, scorching hot from 3. And so Sengun felt a little bit more of a need to be that offensive punch and to kind of drag Turkiye along on the scoreboard until Czechia started to calm down from 3, and then they were able to go blow for blow and eventually kind of take control there in the second quarter and never really looked back, right? And then eventually, Turkiye got to the point where other guys started to heat up. They started getting some more scoring contributions. Cedi Osman stepped up big in the third quarter, and they were able to kind of run away with the game. I want to talk about the other impacts of this game. I want to talk about some of the early struggles, the defense, a couple players on Turkiye's roster that deserve some recognition for their defensive contributions in this game, plus Cedi Osman's sensational third quarter. We're going to get to all of that here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Look, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. Nobody wants to do that. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your smartphone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet, because the spreadsheets kind of suck, right? So my thing is, when I started using Monarch, I was embarrassed and kind of disappointed in myself when I realized just how much money I was spending on food, like dining out at restaurants, getting fast food, ordering carry out, delivery, using the courier apps, all of it, right? Now I budget smarter and I save more. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets and Turkiye basketball through EuroBasket at least. Let's talk a little bit about the early game of this one, because it wasn't a pretty start to the game for Turkiye. In fact, they trailed after the first quarter 27-21. And I referenced this already a little bit. A big part of it was just the inability to get anything going from beyond the arc. And in fact, I'm going back through because I said it. I don't think that they hit a three-pointer in that first quarter, and maybe I'm incorrect, but I'm scrolling back through the first quarter play-by-play right now, and I do believe they did not hit a single three-pointer. Yeah. At one point, like, either 16 of 17 or 18 of 19 of Turkiye's points were all in points in the paint. Like, they were scoring at will in the paint, but they just had nothing going on from beyond the arc. And meanwhile, Czechia was scoring everything beyond the arc. They went 6 of 10 in that first quarter from beyond the arc. And here's where things really changed. I don't know if Ataman over on the sideline, Turkiye's head coach, really hounded the guys about this or whatever, but the defensive focus and renewed attention to detail on that side of the ball starting at the top of the second quarter was night and day with how much more aggressive Turkiye was defensively, guarding at the point of attack, but also really running guys off of the three-point line. And in part, it was two guys specifically that really stood out defensively in this game to me, and it really started, making their presence felt in that second quarter. And it was Seamus Hazer. I'm gonna get the name right, I promise. But the dude who loves poster dunks, because my goodness, he's through 2 games. Seamus has earned a fan in me because he postered Kristaps Porzingis in game 1 against Latvia. He had another poster off of an Alperen Sengun dime in this one. Seamus has earned a fan in me. Dude's got some serious hops. He twisted his ankle after a tap out on a defensive rebound and didn't play the rest of the game. But somebody in my Twitter comments basically said that they had mentioned on the broadcast that he's okay, but that they were just being precautionary with it. So he might not be available for Saturday's game against Portugal, but that he should be good to go, hopefully, for the rest of the tournament. So just kind of taking things precautionary there, which is a good sign because they need his energy, his athleticism off the bench. He was great. He had 3 steals in a very, very short amount of time. 3 steals in 13 minutes of game time. He was all over the basketball defensively in this one. Really pressuring up defensively, making the ball handlers for Czechia feel a little bit more uncomfortable after having kind of free reign there in the first quarter. And also Kenan Sipahi. He didn't have, again, the 3-ball working for him the way he did in game 1 against Latvia, but he was really effective on the defensive side of things. And on top of that, his playmaking. Alperen Sengun led the team in every major statistical category, led in points, led in rebounds, led in assists. The one area that and then Sipahi came in as second highest in assists. He had 7 dimes to only 2 turnovers in this game. So he did a great job taking care of the basketball. But where it really started for Turkiye and when it really felt like they were able to kind of turn the game around, right, was on the defensive side of the ball in that second quarter. And that's where they were able to start kind of cutting into the lead a little bit. And, some of this was also some shooting regression. Like you knew that Czechia wasn't going to be able to shoot 60% from three the whole game, right? Like those outlier shooting performances can be a little hard to come by, which is funny. I say that because Turkiye shot 60% from three against Latvia. But Czechia came back down to earth after that scorching hot first quarter from three. They missed all of their threes in the second quarter. They started 6 of 10 in the first quarter. They went 0 of 11 from three in that second quarter. And I think that, again, the defensive attention to detail was what was really huge. And to basically come up with a 14-point swing, because, again, Turkiye trailed 27-21 going into the second quarter. And then at halftime, they led 45-37. So held Czechia to just 11 points, or no, I apologize, 10 points, right? 10 points after that first quarter. That in combination with Sengun continuing to be aggressive, but starting to focus on the playmaking and the facilitating to close out the half. He finished halftime with a stat line of 12.7 rebounds and 5 assists. So he had 3 more dimes there in that second quarter. Really, that was where he started to take that defensive attention that Czechia was trying to direct towards him when he came back out on the floor, and started making sure to involve his teammates and finding ways to get other guys going. And even by halftime, there wasn't like a clear, Cedi had started to heat up a little bit, but there wasn't really a clearly this is going to be Sengun's Batman, or, Robin to his Batman in this game. And that is honestly the thing that worries me the most about Turkiye and their chances here in the EuroBasket tournament, is on a game-by-game basis, who is going to be the person who steps up to, and really it's going to take probably 2 players to step up, but who are going to be the players who step up on a consistent basis for Turkiye to be able to advance through this tournament, because that you can rely on Sengun each and every game. But who are those other 2 names going to be? I want to talk about one of them who did perform incredibly well in this game, caught fire in the third quarter. That's Cedi Osman, as well as one other name here we haven't mentioned yet, Cedi Osman, who also had himself a really solid game, adding in 16 points behind Sengun and Cedi. We're going to talk about those guys here in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets and Locked On Turkiye, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets and EuroBasket basketball. All right, Cedi Osman, it took him a little while to get into rhythm in this game, but once he was there, he had a stretch in the third quarter where he was legitimately on fire. Could have had a stretch where he would have gone 11 points in the span of about 3 minutes. He had what would have been an incredible buzzer beater 3 at the end of the third quarter that ultimately did not wind up counting. He held onto the ball for an extra 1/10 or 2/10 of a second, a little bit too long. I'm talking a fingertip was still on the ball when you saw the lights on the backboard light up at the end of the quarter, which is really disappointing, because it would have been nice to carry. I think it would have been a 13-point lead into the fourth quarter instead of just a 10-point lead. But Turkiye had all the momentum by that point. It really didn't matter. But he had a stretch there in that third quarter where he hit a 3, which should have been an and one. The first 3 in this sequence should have been an and one for Cedi Osman. Hit the first 3, got fouled, knocked down, did clear contact on the hand. Don't know what the ref was looking at. Comes back down, hits another 3-pointer. I also on social media, I burnt the I was like Cedi Osman, Yaniyor, and then he comes down and hits another 3, and I was like, oh, I burnt it too early. He's still on fire. But hit the back-to-back 3s, and then to finish it off, he had a driving layup, just split straight through the defense, got to the rim, finished at the cup. 8 very quick points on consecutive possessions, all in a row, kind of rounding down that third quarter for Cedi Osman. And again, had that nice 3 ball at the very, very end that was unfortunately didn't count, but had that counted, then he would have had an insane kind of scoring tear there in that third quarter. And that stretch from Cedi Osman is what gave Turkiye the separation that they needed going into that fourth quarter, where there wasn't, I guess, like an immediate amount of pressure to, they had some breathing room, and that breathing room, going into the fourth quarter, 72-62, they were able to kind of just, play calmly, not have to worry about anything. Cedi Osman continued scoring. Alperen Sengun checked back in, and he started, getting to the free throw line and creating havoc and, creating more opportunities for his teammates. That's where he started racking up the last few of his assists. He hit Furkan Korkmaz for a really nice three-pointer. He got to the free throw line a few different times. He hit Osmani for another three-pointer at one point. And that's going to be the guy, honestly, in a couple of games watching this. And I want, look, if you're Turkish, you're listening to this, you're hanging out with us here at Locked On Rockets. First off, I appreciate you. Again, merhaba. But at least from my very brief time viewing the team, watching a little bit of the friendlies, watching these first two games, I would like to see Osmani get a few more 3-point attempts. He seems like probably the purest 3-point shooter in the starting lineup. That might be a stretch, and I'm going strictly off the eye test here. I have not looked at his career stats. I don't know if he's actually like not a good 3-point shooter, whatever. But at least when you see that, the depth available on Turkiye's roster, right? The fact that they could, if they really wanted to, they could run double big starting out the gate, right? They could start Adembona, or they could start Yurtseven if they really wanted to next to Sengun, or they could start Sertaç Şanlı. Like, they could do whatever they want, but instead they opt for Osmani, and he's not really like a big. He strikes me as like one of those like 3-4 kind of tweeners, what you would see at the NBA level. And it certainly at least seems to me that the reason he's starting next to Sengun, right, is to provide that proper amount of floor spacing, right? So between Shane Larkin, Kenan Sipahi, Cedi Osman, and Ersan Osmani, then you have adequate floor spacing for Alp to attack, get downhill, post up, do all the things that he wants to do on the floor consistently. And again, I would just like to see him get a few more opportunities from three. He looks like he has a really pure jumper. And so, my biggest concern, and I echoed this when we did our kind of EuroBasket preview, looking at Turkiye's roster, is who are going to be the guys that consistently step up right next to Alperen Sengun. You got to basically pencil in Cedi Osman, right? He's the second best player on the team, as was confirmed by a lot of Turks, listening to the preview pod and all that, because I wasn't sure if it was Cedi or Shane Larkin. Shane Larkin has games where he completely pops off, right? And he looks sensational, and he's been really important to the Turkish national team. But he can also have games like this, right? Where you don't really feel his presence a ton. He in this game, 5 points, 2 of 6 shooting, 1 of 4 from downtown. He had 4 rebounds, had 3 assists, a couple turnovers. Like, not a great, unfortunately not a great stat line for Shane Larkin. In fact, I really felt like where Turkiye was at their best was when they were running Seamus and Sipahi as their backcourt duo. And Sipahi came away as the plus-minus leader in this game, beating out Alperen Sengun. And I guess Shane Larkin was also a plus 15. Plus-minus doesn't always tell the full story. My eye test told me that I thought Turkiye was a little bit better with Larkin off the floor in this one in particular. But you've got Sengun, you've got Cedi Osman. Who's that third guy going to be, right? Because on any given game, you're going to need that scoring pop from at least a third guy, right? Because Sengun gets you 20, Cedi can get you 20, and then you're going to need either a collective team effort with overall better 3-point shooting. They got away with it in this one, right? 7 of 20 from downtown, 35% overall. That volume is not nearly good enough. Like, when you see Serbia getting up like 43 pointers, or even this game, Czechia put up 41 threes. They hit 14 of them. It's just because they had a stretch where they didn't hit anything, right? Like, my concern is that Turkiye is going to get outmathed later in this tournament. It doesn't strike me that they have, at least, maybe it's not about the desire or like the offensive game plan. Maybe it's just not having the required shooters. but I would like to see them get more threes up, because at the end of the day, if you go up against an opponent who gets up 43 pointers and hits double from downtown than you do, the math is just not going to be in your favor at the end of the day. And it kind of almost wasn't in this game, except for the fact that Turkiye was so dominant inside, dominating the paint, that they were able to kind of make up that ground. And I think that's going to be harder and harder as you start facing tougher and tougher opponents, right? Like, I don't think it's a fair expectation to expect Alperen Sengun to go up against Serbia and put up a 20-point triple-double against Jokic. Now, that's not because like Jokic is some defensive mastermind or anything. It's just Serbia is a really good team, and they're great defensively. They play really well as a cohesive unit. And then when you have Jokic facilitating and pulling the strings offensively, right, it leads to some really easy, wide open looks. And I'd say that in this game in particular, there were probably like, I would wager like 4 or 5 different possessions throughout the game that, a kick out pass happens and it could have resulted in a 3-point shot. And, whoever caught the ball elected to pass it one more time or drive it instead or whatever. And those kind of things ultimately come down to coaching, right? Like if you're not being told, hey, let it fly, right? We're prioritizing threes. We want threes because it's the most efficient shot, right? Like we feel good about taking them. And this is probably where my NBA bias is spilling over, since so many teams in the NBA have transitioned into, this analytics era and prioritizing 3-pointers and all that stuff. And maybe, that's not going to be the case following Turkiye here in EuroBasket. Maybe it's more of an old school style of basketball, right? They're going to pound it out, get it done, paint touches, some middies, the occasional 3-pointer when it's really wide open, but not, I guess, necessarily prioritizing the 3 ball as much as some of the other teams will. And that's kind of ultimately my big reservation here. You're going to get big games from Alperen Sengun. You're going to hopefully continue to get big games from Cedi Osman. But you need that supporting cast around those two guys to really step up. In this game, it was Ersan Osmani. Last game, it was Kenan Sepahi. And as long as they keep getting that third guy to step up and then everybody else does their job, hitting a bucket or two here or there, taking advantage of some of their opportunities, then things should be overall pretty good for them moving through the tournament. I will say, as a quick aside, couple more things here. Adem Bona had a pair of quick buckets there in the third quarter. And I'd like to see Bona spend a little more time sharing the floor with Sengun if possible. It really feels like those two guys have such a great chemistry. And if you can get those two guys playing some big pick and roll where Bona sets the screen for Sengun and rolls to the rim, then what are you going to do? You got to try and stop Sengun on the drive, but you've also got Bona rolling, and you can just, Sengun can lob the ball over the top. I think that's something that Turkiye can lean into a little bit more than they have so far. He only played 14 minutes in this game compared to Sengun, who wound up running up almost 28 minutes, so kind of double the amount of time out there. I don't know how much more you can get out of Bona off the bench, but and part of it too is Osmani was playing so well. I don't think you're gonna. The way that Osmani was playing in this game, right, he deserved to be out there. So this is probably the wrong game to try to illustrate that point. But if there's a game where Osmani is struggling, right, doesn't have the shot, isn't making it, whatever, that's where I'd like to see a little bit more of Adem Bona out there. And dude, Omer Yurtseven, I don't remember him being this clumsy. Like, there were multiple possessions in this game where like he should have walked away with a bucket, like easy under the rim, probably like 2 or 3 different possessions that should have ended with him like just flushing it home, dunking it super easy. He's the biggest dude out there on the floor. He's like massive, right? And I said this on social, but like he could be EuroBasket Shaq if somebody would just teach him to not bring the ball down to his waist every time he catches it. Like whether it's a pass, like he had a lob over the top from Sengun. It wasn't a perfectly placed pass, but if he had just kept the ball up, he didn't even have to dunk it. He could have just laid it up off the glass, but instead he brings the ball down to his waist. And once you bring it down, if you're in the land of the trees and you bring the ball down, suddenly all the guards and wings, they can start slapping at the ball and smacking at your hands and arms, and you're going to lose the ball unless you have like an ironclad grasp on it. And so that's like one of my biggest pet peeves with big men and I've harped on this for big men in the past for the Rockets, and like it's just keeping the ball above your head is so key. When you're already taller than everybody else, just keep it up and you won't lose it. It's I don't say it's unconventional. It's your body's natural reaction. Like when you're wanting to go up with the ball, right? And like you're expecting to try to power through contact, you want to gather yourself, right? And that's the problem is he keeps, I keep seeing Yurt7 try to gather himself before he powers up to try and finish at the rim or get a dunk or whatever. And it's like, man, just keep the ball up, and play on your toes. You're not going to get like a crazy big poster or whatever. It won't be the loud, thunderous dunk you want, but you won't fumble the ball, right? You won't turn it over. He had 2 turnovers in just 10 minutes of run, and he was 1 of 2 from the floor, but it felt like he could have been like 3 of 4 or 4 of 5 at a minimum off the opportunities that he was getting, second chance opportunities, that kind of thing. Now he's great for rebounding, and maybe there's an argument to be made, right? Like, would Shanley be better in that role because he's a little bit more crafty, better hands, probably a better, more reliable finisher around the rim, but you also lose the athleticism and the size and the rebounding if you go with the older veteran Shanley instead of Omar Yurt7, who is still young and, a little spry, right? That's kind of the debate going on there. But either way, I just wanted to highlight that simply because I was watching the game and it really bothered me. And look, I will say, even though the box score doesn't exactly reflect it for Furkan Korkmaz, I thought he was good in stretches, just, facilitating, bringing the ball up, getting Turkiye into some decent sets. Only 2 of 7 shooting, 1 of 4 from downtown, only 1 rebound, 1 assist. He had a moment where he didn't box out on a rebound, and it actually it pissed Alperen Sengun off. He walked over. He's like, what are you doing, man? And he held his hand up. He's like, that's on me, my bad. Everybody else for Turkiye boxed out, and then Furk was the only one who let somebody slip inside, and that was the person who got the rebound. But I think that we're due for a game or 2 of his where he'll pop off, and he's still got a little something left in the tank. And in this game, it was just nice. There were points where he brought the ball up and I was like, okay, I'm comfortable with you initiating offense. Let's see what you got. Overall, I want your thoughts from EuroBasket Game 2, 92-78 win for Turkiye against the Czech Republic. Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. What did you think? How do you feel about who's gonna be that consistent third option for Turkiye after Sengun, after Osman? Who's going to step up to help those 2 guys out in these coming games? Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets and Locked On Turkiye for everything Houston Rockets and EuroBasket basketball.